writing is thinking, and academic writing is thinking about particularly complex issues. I can run around my house. I cannot run around the block, but Caster Semenya can run for hours on end. So those people actually have reached that level of being so good at what they do, and part of it comes from that repeated exercise. The academic writing struggle is real, so there's no one who gets so good at it that they do things in one take. The funny thing is that both things are going to keep you awake. You'll be awake in the beginning because it looks like you really cannot think of anything. You're going to be awake in the end because there's so much that is coming through and you don't know how to manage it. So I would like to talk about the things that are so normal about academic writing that if many of us understood them, we will either be less anxious or happier, or maybe both, because I don't think that you can get rid of the anxiety that comes with academic writing. And I'm going to touch on this later. But I think one of the things that we have to understand at the onset is that writing is thinking, and academic writing is thinking about particularly complex issues on which no one can even reach a level of agreement, right? So if it is this complicated, there are certain things that you have to accept are going to not go as smoothly, and it's going to induce certain feelings in you that you shouldn't be necessarily eager to get rid of. But sometimes you just have to either let them wash over you or you have to process them. So here's my list of 10 things that you should normalize if you're an academic writer, whether you're working on a dissertation or turning in essays or working on your PhD or postdoc. These things are ever so normal that if a lot of people understood them, we would have more happy writers. The first thing, and this is something that a lot of people get concerned about. If you are at the start of an academic journey, let's say you're starting to write your dissertation, it's so normal that you are going to spend sometimes up to half the time having no clue what you are doing. So you will be reading a lot of things, you will be trying to figure out what exactly you are trying to do. And sometimes the more you read, the more confused or more paralyzed you get. This is all so very normal. And because you are processing very complex things, I think what tends to happen is that your brain is trying to orient itself in the problem. You're trying to figure out the patterns that might be emerging or already sitting in the materials that you're going through, just trying to get a good grip on the problem. So it happens a lot that when you first start out, you have no clue what you are doing. It looks like you will never turn something in. But I think if you can go to your library, look at past dissertations, talk to people who have finished them, you will know that your time is also coming. So be patient with yourself when you're going through those early days of having no clue what you are doing. But do trust the process. So when you do things right, when you do actually engage with the literature, you read it yourself to try to understand what the key problems are. Eventually, a light bulb will come on, and then you will start to see the light, and then you will be able to get things done. So you won't know what you're doing for the first half. It's perfectly normal. It happens to everyone. I'm a researcher now. With every project that I do, I start off having no clue what I'm doing. But then it's something that gradually grows on me. But then once I get it, it's quite easy to get it done and turn something in that's going to be very good. A second thing, and this is usually very upsetting for a lot of people. I get a lot of comments about this. You will put in a lot of effort and get a lot of criticism in return. So if you're doing your dissertation, for example, you have a supervisor. They are not seeing their job as patting you on the back, because at this moment, I suppose we are assuming that you understand that you have taken up a very big intellectual challenge, and we see our job is helping you to produce the best version possible and to meet the best version of yourself intellectually. So as a result, you might spend a lot of hours doing a lot of work and hardly get a compliment, but get comments like, oh, this is not good, or now this is not good. So your work is always work in progress until you turn in the final piece. So as a result, Some of it might have to do with academics. We are not the most socially developed of people, right? So we don't always see the necessity of these social rituals where you do give the compliment, you do make an acknowledgement. It's not an excuse, but it's just to explain to you why you might have that supervisor who seems like they're never satisfied, right? The criticism is meant to be constructive. It's meant to help you produce the next best version. And the best thing that you can do for yourself is to learn to distance yourself. So you as an individual with a particular mindset or way of thinking from the criticism on what you have produced, right? So the criticism is never at you directly. It's at the piece of work that you have generated. And the intention is that you can improve upon it. And if you would be able to make this separation, then usually it helps you to be less defensive in terms of processing that feedback. And it can also open up a pathway for you to have constructive conversations with your supervisor so that you actually really do make a material improvement in what you are trying to develop. So embrace the criticism, because it's one of the ways that you are going to produce better work. And this work is never done until you submit that piece at the deadline. So another thing that you should also normalize if you're an academic writer is that you are going to generate dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of drafts before you get to something, right? And there are several reasons for this. So the first relates to what I already said. Academic writing is thinking about particularly complex tasks. So if these are your thought processes and they are evolving, you are kind of documenting them, you are tracking them, you are refining them on a piece of paper, whether it's digital or actually old school pen and paper. So you are going to keep making those drafts, because once you see what your mind has actually conjured, you have then the position to be able to interrogate that and to make improvements upon it. And then another issue is that because you're also thinking about complex things, so you are first writing for yourself. This is something that I think is important, and I wish everyone understood. The early drafts that you develop as part of your writing process are for yourself. It's for you to gain clarity of thought. It's for you to actually understand what are the key arguments here that I'm trying to make? What are the most important elements that I see in the literature that I am bringing together? And what is it that the position that I am taking on the basis of that? And how do I make sure that it is balanced and it is critical enough? Then once you have understood this for yourself, at a certain moment as part of the writing process, it's going to flip and you're going to start then writing for your audience. Then you communicate to them exactly what you would want them to know. So there's a process where a lot of what you write is going to be a lot. So usually we first start with a lot of words. I have a friend who always says, first get a complete thing. And that complete thing might be double the word count. It's so normal because it's you still trying to figure out what you're doing. But once you gain that clarity of thought and you understand what you are doing, then you're going to be able to then turn it around and write it very precisely and get rid of all the fluff that might become a distraction for your readers or might set expectations that you don't intend to meet. So this way you can start brutally editing once it's become clear to you what you are doing. I have a YouTube video on exactly this where I talk about how you write to think. So if you're struggling with getting started, what that video does is take you through the different steps of how you write. So if you go on my YouTube page, Dr. Noni Extra, and you look for my video, how to start writing your thesis or dissertation, and then it has the thumbnail, how to write to think. Really, all it does is, okay, first just do a brain dump. Just get out of your mind whatever is in there without judgment, without interrogation, without trying to make it perfect. And then once it is out there, then you are in the position to start sorting through whatever came out. Some of it will be obviously useless, so you can discard it. Some of it might be useful, you're not sure, so you just put it aside, you save it just in case. Some of it might be worth something, you want to run with it. Some of it might make you realize what sort of information you still need before you can develop your draft further. And I like to take this approach because it also helps me to be a bit more focused when I go into the literature. I have a sense what I'm looking for, what I don't know. I have a sense what I might think is a gap, then I'm spending time to make sure that what I really think is a gap is a gap. Because if it isn't, then I shouldn't be spending too much time on it. So do check out that video if you're at the start and you don't know how to start, because it's going to give you a stepwise approach to thinking through your writing process. So yes, third thing, normalize the dozens of drafts that you're going to have to generate before you get the final thing. This is you thinking about a complex matter, and therefore, naturally, you are going to have multiple iterations before you are quite there. And then once the clarity of thought has occurred to you, you are then going to write with precision of expression, precisely expressing to your readers what the key issues are, how you address them, and what your key contributions are going to be. A fourth thing that we have to normalize is reading. A good writer is a good reader. So I see a lot of affinity for AI summaries, and one of the reasons that people will usually give for why they will be drawn to these summaries is that academic reading is hard. Yes, it is hard. I have been spending time with linguists lately. I'm very interested in linguistics because of how AI affects natural language and what we see happening with the divergence of the written speech, even in academic writing, right? It's the convergence, everything starts to sound the same. And one of the things that they say in linguistics is that academic writing or academic English is a second language for everyone. So even native speakers have to learn the lingo of academic communication, which is very different from everyday communication. So the only way that you can actually become really good at expressing yourself in the language that is used in academic writing is by you exposing yourself to a lot of the written works in academic writing. So the more that you are able to read and absorb over time, the easier it's going to be for you to understand what actually the texts are saying. And then the easier it's going to become for you to articulate yourself in ways that make sense to an academic audience. So don't bypass the reading by reaching for these tools that simplify the things for you, because it means that you never really engage with the language. And if you don't engage with the language, then you're never going to be an effective communicator in terms of what matters, right? So just like any language in any culture has its own unwritten rules, you will see that academic writing also has a lot of unwritten rules. And the only way you can understand those rules is by immersing yourself in the language that is used in academic writing. And once you do that, it's going to get easier. So normalize reading in academic writing. It's not a waste of time. It's how you are able to understand the processes involved in constructing arguments, in showing the validity of your work, in being precise in terms of how you express yourself. So I get a lot of comments of people saying, can you please show me an example of what a synthesized review looks like? Well, if you are reviewing the literature, all you have to do is go to the literature review sections of the papers that you are reading, highlight any citations that they have where they use more than one author. That is synthesis. And then try to understand what they try to do with those things. Even track one author that might appear multiple times and see how they're introduced. And only then will you internalize how it is done. So in a way, it's like riding a bicycle. I can give you a lot of theory. I can give you some specific example, but you will only understand the nuances and you will get really good at it if you really practice for yourself. So read is going to be the best investment that you make in yourself. If you are far from your dissertation period, already start building the habit of reading as part of completing your essays, because then it's going to make it really so much easier for you by the time you get to the dissertation, because then you master the language of academic writing. Then it becomes easier for you to understand the things that you are reading, and it becomes easier for you to express yourself so that other people can also understand you in the academic setting, in the intellectual sense, in terms of what is expected. So reading is not a waste of time. It's an investment. Normalize it. Then another thing is that the academic writing struggle is real. So there's no one who gets so good at it that they do things in one take. So if you have professors and you have nice conversations with them, just ask them how it's been like project upon project, right? So every academic undertaking presents its own unique sets of challenges. And because we are thinking about complex things, then yes, it's going to be a lot of work. But I see a lot of people who gravitate towards the argument that it's a form of torture, right? It's a form of unnecessary abuse because there are easier ways to do things. No, not if you really want to think deeply and meaningfully and rigorously about a very important issue that you would like to understand, right? So it's the same way, the way that people apply their bodies. I can run around my house. I cannot run around the block, but Caster Semenya can run for hours on end, right? So those people actually have reached that level of being so good at what they do, and part of it comes from that repeated exercise. They still train for every event that they are preparing for. They don't just roll out of bed and say, I'm such a great runner, I'm just going to go to that marathon, right? When they know the marathon is coming up, they change their diet. They are very strict about their routine, their specific things that they do to prepare. So for them to excel in what they do, it involves a lot of work. And it's the same with intellectual undertakings. Not everyone can apply their mind in the way that people who have committed to some kind of academic undertaking can do. And that is hard, but it's something that we get better at, and it's something that we consistently put effort in. So whenever you feel yourself struggle, do not see it as torture or as a form of punishment, but this is you building your intellectual muscle. So you have to work out your brain in order for you to get better, to become much more efficient in terms of what you do. So for me, as a result of being very invested in understanding academic processes, I now have the same standard template for all my introductions. So my challenge is different from what I had in the early years, where even the structure was a problem. But I now say, okay, here is my introduction. Excuse me. These are the 5 paragraphs that I'm going to have in the introduction. Paragraph 1, what's the problem? Why is it important? Why should we care about it from a theoretical perspective? So what sort of explanations does it give us? And also from a practical perspective. So who in practice is going to benefit from us understanding this problem any better, right? And then in the second paragraph, I'm going to say, this is the state of the art. This is the state of the existing knowledge about this particular issue. And these are the shortcomings that still exist in the literature. In the third paragraph, I'm going to say explicitly, this is the research question. So this is the part of the limitations in the current understanding that I would like to address. Put a very specific question with a question mark so that people cannot miss it. And then in the fourth paragraph, I'm going to say these are the methods that I'm going to use, and I'm going to spend some time showing how they fit the question that I have asked. So I work a lot with qualitative case studies, which means that a lot of my questions are usually framed as how and why questions, right? So I use a qualitative case study approach because it's good for problems, complex phenomena that are best understood within their real world setting. And then after that, I'm going to have a fifth paragraph. What is the contribution of the research, right? And I have at this point 3 videos on my YouTube page, Dr. Noni Extra, where one, I tell you this is the structure of the introduction, and here is how you develop each of these different paragraphs. I have another video that says citations are still important in the introduction section, and here are the things that you can do in order to make sure that you are already building a strong case for your research in the introduction. What sort of literature should you cite, and where do you find this literature? And then I have another video that takes you through my process of writing the introduction. So I used to be in the camp of people who believe that you write the introduction last because now you know what you're going to do. But now I write the introduction first because I'm writing for myself first. I'm trying to orient myself in the problem. I'm trying to understand what I don't understand. And I'm trying to see potentially what the contributions are going to be. So that same structure still lends itself well to helping me to think through what I'm trying to do. And then after a while, as I go through the sections, after the literature review, I will go back and tweak my introduction. Then I'll go through methods. I will look at my results. I'll go back and tweak the introduction. Then I'll write the whole thing up, get to discussion. And when I'm done, the introduction is still the last thing that I'm going to write, because now I want to remove all the fluff. I want to be very specific about what really actually I contribute in the end, what really actually the gap that I'm addressing is. And then this is going to work. So as a result, it took a lot of work for me to get there, but now I'm at a point where at least I know I'm going to save time when it comes to the structure of the introduction. I'm going to be efficient in terms of how I approach the introduction, but I'm still going to be using my mind a lot for every problem to try to understand what those issues are that fit within those 5 paragraphs. Maybe my paragraph 4 for most of the part is the same because I just do qualitative case studies. So it's just making sure that that paragraph is framed specifically for the problem that I'm addressing this time. So make that investment. It looks like hard work in the beginning. It looks like a struggle that is never ending, some form of torture, but that's not what it is. This is you becoming the master of whatever you have chosen. This is you performing at an elite level in terms of how you think about problems and how you present them to other people. And even if you're not staying on in academia, these skills are going to be so invaluable in practice, right? Are you able to think about complex problems in practice? And are you able to communicate them to the people that you work with using the lingo that they understand, the type of language that they would work with in order to bring them on board when it comes to resolving those issues? So once you do that, you're going to start to see that it's so enjoyable. But yes, the start of it is not going to be great. You're not always going to be enjoying it. So that is the 5th thing. The struggle is real, but the point is not to make you suffer. The point is to help you to build your intellectual muscle, to help you to be able to function at an elite level, to make you stand out from the rest in terms of how you approach problems and how you're able to work through them. Another thing to normalize, and this is the 6th point, is that when you start your dissertation, it happens a lot that in the beginning, you're just drawing a lot of blanks. You are trying to figure out what problem it is. So this is whenever people approach me and they say, can you please give me a topic? I know exactly what is happening. Yes, this is the early phase where despite your best efforts, you just cannot think of anything. Even when you read, you're feeling like, okay, but they've already done everything. So what is me going to do in all of this? What am I going to contribute when people have already done these great things? So drawing blanks in the beginning is so normal. But then there comes a point also where ideas start to come in like a flood. Like you cannot stop them. It's like you're shooting a lot of ideas out almost by the minute, and you can hardly keep up with those ideas. And the funny thing is that both things are going to keep you awake. You'll be awake in the beginning because it looks like you really cannot think of anything. You're going to be awake in the end because there's so much that is coming through and you don't know how to manage it. So the best way that I would usually advise people to do this is that, if you're drawing blanks, one of the first things that I usually ask people is, how much reading have you done? Because reading, to me, is collecting the raw materials that you're going to need to create knowledge. So if you're writing a dissertation and you're making a particular contribution, to know if it's a worthwhile contribution, you're going to have to read something. And then something is going to be, it's going to be sort of, it lights up in you, or it gives you something to work with in order to come up with your own ideas. So if you're stuck, just read. Just spend a lot of time reading. I saw a post today, and I don't remember where it was, but they were saying, for example, for your literature review, expect that you are going to spend 90% of your time reading and only 10% of your time writing it. So you need to collect those materials. And that's the only way that you can deal with the lack of ideas, the lack of inspiration in those early stages. But then in the later stages, because you sort of warm up to the idea, you warm up your system, your brain gets active, and then it is a bit out of control. It's just throwing ideas at you. one of the things that I used to do, especially towards the late phases of my dissertation, and I still do that for a lot of my key projects when I'm about to wrap them up, I always keep a notebook that's dedicated to that particular project. And if I have an idea, even in the dead of night, I will wake up and I will write it down and I will put that away. But that allows me to sleep. Like once I have captured an idea that I think is worthwhile, then I don't have to be lying there worried that I will wake up in the morning and I will have forgotten what it was about, right? So sometimes having that anxiety and then being able to write something down calms your brain down, it calms you down, and then you can get the rest that you need to actually then be able to continue to do the other important things, rest being one of them. So normalize it. You'll stay awake in the beginning because you have no ideas. You'll stay awake in the end because you have too many ideas coming at you. And the best way to manage the first problem is to read. The best way to manage the second problem is to write. So just document things and leave them there. Then you'll be able to see that it does get better. Another thing that I think is quite funny is that you will notice at a certain point that your body and your brain are out of sync. Sometimes your brain feels active and you really want to do things, and your body says, sorry, I'm done. I'm not going to be doing anything more than I have already offered up, right? So sometimes what happens to me is that my body just parks for the night and I wake up and my brain is like, okay, I need to do things. And my body is like, no, sorry, it's not going to work today. And sometimes it's the other way around, right? I've really had a rest physically and I think I'm ready to do something during the day. But then the brain says, no, I have done too much and I'm not going to be able to do more. So one of the constant challenges that you're going to have is to try to bring your brain and your body to a level where they're at least in sync enough for you to be able to get enough done. So we tend to focus a lot on the fatigue that comes with the body. I think it's harder to ignore, but sometimes there is the fatigue that comes with the brain just doing too much. And the way that your brain needs rest sometimes is different from the way that your body needs rest. Maybe reading a novel is going to help your brain out than picking another academic article. Maybe going out, just outside, walking somewhere in a park is going to do your brain much more good than you sitting in a room and trying to sort through problems. So one of the things that I'm trying to learn now is to understand, what's the difference between the needs of my body and the needs of my brain, and how do I try to maintain them at a level that is going to allow me to get a lot done. So one of the things, for example, that I did as a way to understand my brain especially was to just try to track my activity in a given day over an extended period. I think I did it for almost 3 months. And one of the things that I learned is that for the actual writing, I am going to need something like 200 minutes a day. This was the typical performance threshold for me. 200 minutes is less than 4 hours. So if my brain can actually be applied, I can cognitively apply myself to write something for 200 minutes a day. It means that I don't need 8 hours in a day to get academic writing done. And that made me feel free because then I could pursue other things that allow my brain to rest. I could do other things that bring me joy so that I'm not in a constant state of stress. And then that also buys me mileage to be able to produce something day after day after day. So if you don't know yet, like what's your productivity threshold, I would recommend that this is one of the things that you do very early on in the process. Just track your activity. You don't even need to try to will yourself to do certain things. Just see how you do things. And then this is going to give you intel that's going to help you to understand. Get that Excel sheet, track every day, track how much time you spend actually writing. Even if it's scattered throughout the day, then you add that time up and that is going to tell you something. Some of it might also just reveal time-wasting behaviors that we like to engage in, right? So if it feels like it's too hard for me to do this thing, I'd rather be doom scrolling than actually trying to get through the problem or doing something that might help me to then be in the state of mind to focus on what I need to do. So that is something that I found to be important. And then 8, just know your productivity is not going to be linear. So a lot of us make our plans for the dissertations in this way, in the first 2 weeks, I'll collect my data. In the first 3 weeks, I'm going to analyze my data. Then in the remaining 4 weeks, I'm going to write up. But actually, it does happen a lot that the first 3 to 6 weeks actually kind of go by. You have a plan, but then the thesis seems to have a life of its own. So it develops as it does. So most of us have this productivity curve. Actually, that is non-linear, right? It's exponential. At first, it looks like nothing is happening. We feel like we're putting in the hours, nothing's coming out. I've read article upon article and I still don't have an idea what I would like to do. And then one day something changes and then suddenly I can get a lot done in a very short space of time. So this non-linear view to our productivity can also help you to calm down. If you're doing the right things in the first stages, you're reading as you should, you're trying to track your thoughts through writing, then don't worry so much about the schedule that you put up for yourself. That schedule is a blueprint. That's all it is. It's like, okay, this is what I will do. But usually when you actually do the actual thing, you will find that there's natural friction. There are things that you didn't foresee, and it's really difficult to kickstart the processes of your brain. But once the system is warmed up, then you're going to see yourself take off. So don't panic if you're doing the right things. The productivity is not linear. I've hardly met any people who have done it in a linear way. So you first look like you're losing time in the beginning, and then usually you will more than catch up if you actually stay true, if you trust the process and do the things that you have to do. So that's one thing. And then something that I think is also important, as I have already said, you will plan and your dissertation will happen. So as a result, it's always better for you to understand where your time went, because when you're wasting time versus you still thinking through a problem. You know whether you're accumulating enough knowledge for you to be able to do something meaningful later, or if you really are hopeless and you need help. And as a result, also, I will always encourage, have good conversations with your supervisors. If you have doubts about your progress, express that to them early. Don't wait until 2 weeks before the deadline to bring up all the issues that you're struggling with, because it's not going to help you very much. So just understand that we plan, dissertations happen, and our only duty, actually we have 2 duties. One is to stay true to the process, trust the process, emphasize on getting the process right. You make sure that you prioritize the process over the outcome, because this is where everything happens. And then second, just be patient. When you know that you've done the right things, then just wait and see what's going to happen. And then the final one, this is for all the perfectionists out there. Listen, guys, there will always be an opportunity to do better. That deadline will come and you're going to feel like, oh, there's so much I could have done better. I feel like that all the time. I feel like that even with papers that get accepted, all the reviewers are happy, the editors are happy. They're like, okay, can you just fix these language errors and send it back to us? And I'm finding myself trying to dismantle the paper again. But no, if at a certain point, you're going to have to let it go. So there will always be an opportunity to do better. But I don't know where I picked this up, but this is something that was doing the rounds during my PhD years. They say a good dissertation is a finished dissertation, right? So the goal is to finish. It will never be perfect, except that. I have also a friend from Brazil who usually says to me, Noni, feito, finished, is better than perfeito, perfect, right? So feito is better than perfeito. Finished is better than perfect. So at some point, you're going to have to let it go, set yourself free. Somebody might make an improvement on it. You trust that you have made an improvement on the previous knowledge up to where you could take it. And then one day someone will pick up your work and they will also build on it and they will make some improvements. And this is the state of academic knowledge. We are never really done improving it. So when the deadline's up, we forget about it. We do not revisit it in our minds 1,000 times. We wait for that feedback. We wait for that grade. And then we look forward to graduation. So these are the 10 things that I hope people can normalize when it comes to academic writing, and especially if you're looking at time-bound pieces of work like your thesis or dissertation, and they're quite intense, because this is the reality of it. Once you embrace these things, you're going to be a much happier writer. You're going to start to enjoy the process as well.